Hey gang, Private Jack here. Welcome to part 4 of my series on how to convert XNA models for use in Source FilmMaker using Blender. Part 1 we talked about the programs that were required for the process, how to install them. We talked about a couple of plugins, one for GIMP that allows us to convert image files into VTFs, and two for Blender, one being the XNLA LoRa import tool and the other being the SMD import-export tool that will require to convert the Blender file into a Valve source model file. That will be used by GUI Studio to create the model that we'll use in Source FilmMaker. Part 2 we talked about XNA LoRa. It's a program that's used for posing the XNA type models. Remember quickly, this is it. Imported a model. And then we exported this model into a format that will be able to be read by Blender. Okay, and that's all we needed LoRa for. So with that, what we do now is we get into Blender, and the purpose of this particular tutorial is not to teach you how to use Blender, but to actually show you how to edit a model in Blender. So I have to assume that you know how to use Blender and how to configure it to work in this scenario. If you haven't got a clue about Blender, then what I suggest you do is go to a site. It's called BlendTuts, and watch some of the tutorials that are here. This is a very good site. The webmaster, Oliver, has put together some amazing tutorials, and one of the ones that I suggest that you watch is under the Beginners tab, and it is this one here, Basic Interfaces. What this will do is it'll teach you how the interfaces work in Blender, how to set up some of the user preferences, and basically gives you a good in and out on how to move around in Blender. So blendtuts.com, click on the green tab up here, go to the beginner tutorials, and look up basic interfaces and watch the tutorial. I actually worked through it. So that being said, let's get into Blender. We don't need XNA LoRa anymore, and we're going to pull down Blender. We still have our XNA-SMD folder here. This is where we put our Ralph model, and that's the one that we're going to import. So get Blender up and running. We're going to open up the folder and click on Blender EXE. This will present you with the basic start screen. First screen up is the splash screen. To get rid of the splash screen, just click anywhere in Blender. That will leave you with the three objects on the screen. Anything that you see on the screen here is an object with the exception of the grid. So a light, a cube, and a camera. As I said, it's not my job to teach you how to use Blender, but to help facilitate you understanding the tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create screencast keys. Come on, where are you? Let's try that again. There we go. And screencast. I must not have it loaded yet. Okay. So that brings us to the point of actually setting Blender up so that most of the interfaces that you're going to require are available. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go into File, come down here to User Preferences, and this is the thing that the tutorials at BlendTuts are going to take you through. What these things are, what they do, how to set them up, how to change things, where to put files, and talks about the system here as well. But what we need here right now to get things up and running is add-ons. These are the various add-ons that are available for Blender, with the exception of the two that we added, and we're going to click them on here in a couple of seconds. So for me personally, I have almost all these checked on because there's a lot of stuff in here that I use. So what I would suggest is that you just walk down through them and click them all on. Now you'll see some of them here with little warning signs and little action figures. If you click over here on the arrow and expand the actual add-on, if it has one of these little warning signs, it will tell you what is wrong with the script. So this particular script requires repairs. Blender is a work in progress. It's an open source type tool. That means that things are updated almost on a daily basis. What might work in Blender today might not work in Blender tomorrow, simply due to the fact that somebody has changed some sort of the code either in the main engine itself or within the plugin and has broken something. The developers are constantly watching for changes and updating their scripts as required. This one here I'm going to take anyway because I like the measuring panel. Screencast keys. This is the thing that I was talking about earlier. See how it's not clicked on? Click that on. It'll be available to me now. I'm going to leave the meshes unchecked because I want to talk about those a little bit. The import, export things. Import. Material tools. B-surface meshes. What these meshes are additional meshes that can be loaded, or tools that help you manipulate the meshes a little bit easier. More objects like chains and cell fractures, cloud generators, that kind of thing. Grease pencils. Now this one, and this one I'm going to leave unchecked because I don't use off-site or third-party render tools. We're not rendering in Blender anyway, so not required. I don't need demo mode, property charts, system information, UV bakers. Yeah. Okay, now that I have those checked on, I'm going to come back up here to the top, and I'm going to show you a couple of things here. Okay, so enabled, disabled. These are the tools that I haven't enabled yet, and basically they are all the import-export tools. So 3D Coat, if you have the 3D Coat program, I do. I need that if I want that to work. Import, export, Atomic Blender PDB files, C3D files, not C4D but C3D, and it's earlier versions of the meshes that have C3D. X format, DXF, export camera animation, okay, PC2s, Unreal Engine format, PSK PSAs, and you'll find that it's in here a couple of times. Some are for the skeletal meshes and animation sets. Those, the one that I just checked, are for meshes. JX, okay, After Effects, EDL, import images as planes. What that will do is if you have a picture and you want to bring it in as a backdrop, you can actually add it to a plane. Lightwave objects, that's the object files. More Unreal stuff. This is the one that we're going to need, the XNA LoRa extension mesh, ASC2s. Make human files, MSD, MDD, Chan, Quake map format, raw meshes. This is the other one that we're going to require, and those were those two plugins that we added earlier in session 1. Virtual, and that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to come back up here to all, and I am going to save the user settings. That way what will happen is the next time I start Blender, those will be available to me. I'm also going to file and save the startup file so that it will, you have to pretty much do it twice, that way they will be available to you the next time you open Blender. Okay, moving around, holding down the middle mouse button, I can pivot. Before I do that, now I'm going to set up those screencast keys, and that's going to display a little icon down here, mouse, and when I press a mouse button while I'm working in the work area, it will display which mouse button I'm pushing, or if I happen to hit a key, it'll tell you what key I'm hitting and how many times I've hit it. So if you get lost, you can come back here and have a look down here and see what I'm doing. Okay, middle mouse button down allows me to rotate in space. If I want to rotate on an object, I select the object by holding the cursor over the object and pushing the right mouse button. And if I press the period button, it will make that object the center point for rotation. Okay, so I'm going to select the camera now, push the numpad period button, and now when I rotate, it's going to rotate around that camera. Back to the mouse, push that numpad button period, and now the mesh is the center of the rotation field. Select the lamp, push that button. Now the lamp is the center of the rotation field. Okay, zooming in and out. In the work area, all I do is I rotate the mouse upwards and it will zoom in, pull it back, and it zooms out. Moving an object, if I right click on an object and hold down the button, I can move that object. And if I don't set up something in the user preference, it will not let go until I press the right mouse button. If I have it in this mode and I decide I didn't want to move it, if I repress the left mouse or the right mouse button, it will go back to the original position. So, right mouse button, move the object. I can let go of the mouse button and it will carry on unless I've set something up in the user preference that as soon as I release the button it stays in place. To release the object, I press the left mouse button and it stays there. Let's say I didn't want it there and I want it to go back to the original location. If I hold down the Control and press Z, it'll undo the last action. And let's see. That's pretty much all we need to think about right now until we get into actually working with the model. So, what I want to do is I want to select all the objects on the screen and delete them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press the A button to unselect everything, or if nothing was selected, that would have selected everything. So now that everything is not selected, I press the A button again and everything is selected. I press the X button and press the left mouse button on delete and everything is deleted. We don't need a camera, lamp, or that cube for what we're going to be doing right now. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import that mesh ASC file that we created for Ralph. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first shift and press the S button. That will bring up my snap dialog. I'm going to move the cursor to center so that it's in the center. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to File, Import, and I'm going to find the XNA LoRa Extended Mesh Import tool. I'm going to go back to the desktop and I'm going to go into that XNA SMD folder that we created where we stored Ralph. And I'm going to double click on ralph.mesh.asc2. And that imports Ralph into our workspace. You can see that he already has all his covering. He's just a basic clay model. And the reason for that is that Blender does not know where the materials are living for this particular model yet. We'll get into that more on that later. But I just want to point out that right now Ralph is here, his skeleton is here, okay, and had I exported that XNA model as an object, and I'm going to do that quickly here. There's Ralph again. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export him as an OBJ file, a Lightwave OBJ file. And I'm going to put him in that same folder. Exit out of Laura now. Okay, come back into Blender. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to import Ralph. I'm going to move the 3D cursor over here because I want him to spawn here. File, import, and I find OBJ now. Lightwave, OBJ. Lightwave, OBJ, where are you? Wavefront. Okay. And I'm going to import the Ralph model. And I'm going to move him. See the difference? This model is rough and it's not smoothed out. There are no bones in this model whatsoever. The vertex groups are still there though, but you can see the difference. Now I'm going to select all of this model. Should have them all selected. I'm going to come over here to shading and I'm going to change it to smooth. And you can see pretty much it looks pretty much the same, but again there is no skeleton in this particular model whatsoever. That's why it's always best to export your XNA LoRa models as an ASCII. Also, if I come over here, I find that there is one material. Actually, they're all there. All the materials are there, but if I come into the... it doesn't know the name of the material files. Let's look at this guy. Okay. Material 3. It doesn't know the name of the actual texture files either, so that's something that we'll be working on. As for scale, oops. Let's move him back. You can see pretty much that they're the same scale, so it's what you want to do with your model. If you want to have to actually create a skeleton for your entitled model and work from that, you can, or you can actually import the bones and we can work from those bones and make them work for us. This model here I'm going to get rid of. For your information, I'm pressing B for box select, and I'm just going to delete that model. Oops. Control Z, because I didn't want to delete this guy. I pressed A to unselect everything. B. Now I'm going to press X to delete, and away he goes. He's gone. Okay, that brings us back to here. We now have our model in Blender, and anything I want to do with this guy, I can. In our T-pose the way that I want them. Now let's say I wanted to add a wart or something to his face. I can do that. I just have to make sure I have the right model selected. Right now this particular model is in 4 parts plus an armature. So I want the face. I can press, once I have the face selected, I can press tab, go into edit mode, and say I want to add a wart right there. I could add a wart to his face. Okay. So, as you can see, if I hold down the Shift key and I hold down the middle mouse button in the work screen, I can move the model on the left, right, up, down axis. If I hold down the Alt key and the middle mouse button, nothing happens. If I hold down the Control key and the middle mouse button, I can zoom in and zoom out. Okay. Well, we've got him in here, and now he's ready to be manipulated. And what we're going to do first off is probably close off this particular session. Let me find out where we're at. 26 minutes. Yeah, we're going to end off this session, and in our next session we are going to start manipulating the model. So before we start, or before we close off, we're going to File, and we're going to Save As. We're going to point back to that XNA SMD file folder, go into Ralph, and we're going to save this as Ralph Blend. Ralph.blend. Save the Blender file. Now I'm ready to close off Blender and end our session. Private Jack out for now.